let's do my best Asmongold. What's this? Why your body rejects popular games? Huh. This is from DarylTalksGames. We actually did a reacts to this before.
How many of you have heard this one before? A new game is on the rise. Everyone is playing it. The soundtrack is like raindrops from heaven gently landing on your eardrums. The combat is crunchy and delicious. The story is a simultaneous gut punch and warm embrace. It's everything you could have wanted in a game. And you're brimming with excitement, desperate to share your thoughts about it. You've got to tell someone. You're like that cup of apple juice you poured as a kid and you have to be careful with
nice.
kind of... You ask your friend what they think of the game and they reply, it was all right.
All right, so he's talking about the marketing cycle and reaction to the marketing cycle. We did a react to DarylTalksGames before, and I think it was one of my more positive ones. So a great channel. Go subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet.
What did you just say to me?
Yeah.
One of the most disheartening things in life is when you deeply desire to share with a friend something that means a lot to you, only to be met with one of the following adjectives describing that thing. Mid, overrated, overhyped, mainstream, alright, fine. And as we all know, this often happens because we just all like different things, right? You like shooters more than RPGs unless it's that kind of RPG. I like fighters more than party games unless it's that kind of party game. But what I find fascinating is that friend whose justification for something being mid or...
He's going to get to the point, but I have to imagine it's just different tastes, right? That's what he's saying.
Interesting is because it's too mainstream or too popular. The friend that doesn't like a game or simply refuses to play it because the gaming community has blown too much smoke on it. And there's this person for a lot of media. Maybe you are that friend and don't fully understand why your body starts to reject something as soon as it becomes popular.
I'm like that sometimes. Like, I wouldn't say all the time, but sometimes I'm just like, yeah, everybody seems to love this thing. Or like in Starfield's example, everybody was like hating on it and I play it and I'm just like, I kind of like this. Like, I think it's good. So I was sort of surprised by that one.
Were you one of the people that just couldn't get into Elden Ring? Are you the friend that finds Tears of the Kingdom boring? Do you want to play Pow World less and less the more you hear about it? Are you going to stab a bitch if someone tells you to play Outer Wilds again? And furthermore, if these games didn't have the massive following they do and you found...
Was that a game? Like, what did that guy punch the laptop for?
...them on your own, would your feelings toward them be different? These are the questions I want to answer today. But before that, let's hear a quick word from today's sponsor.
Okay, Opera GX is great. His sponsor reads are pretty long, so we're gonna go forward. I remember this guy now. He like talks about the psychology of all of these products, and it's super duper fascinating. I'm really excited to see that a new video is out. Please go subscribe to DarylTalksGames. I really like his content.
In his 1965 research, psychologist Robert Zajonc discovered a phenomena that he would name the mere exposure effect. Essentially, the more someone is...
The hypothesis is offered that mere repeated exposure of the individual to a stimulus object enhances its attitude toward it. By mere exposure is meant a condition making the stimulus accessible to that individual's perception. Support for the hypothesis consists of 4 types of evidence presented and reviewed.
Simply exposed to a stimulus, the more they like it. This is one reason hype around a new game builds so fast. If you're on social media, your exposure to new titles is as high as Rob Van Dam. And this phenomenon works because when you recognize something, your mind gives you a little shot of happiness to encourage you to learn more about it. It rewards itself for understanding something that was once unfamiliar. And when that something is a new sexy title that's making the rounds, it's not just a shot of happiness, it's a fucking cascade of good neurotransmitters just making your pupils dilate and your timeline explode. Everyone is discovering new things you can do, sharing those things online, repeatedly exposing others to those things and infecting them with curiosity as well. Retrospectively, this might seem pretty obvious because it is. This just in, people like new stuff. But what isn't so obvious is how this mere exposure effect can work on so many, but somehow have the reverse effect on others.
So I have to wonder if it's just oversaturation. Like, if I'm told what I'm supposed to think about something, like sometimes I'll just flip and I'll just be like, look, I just don't want to hear about this thing anymore. I'm not interested in playing it. I'm playing this other game right now. I really like it. And I'm curious what the psychology answer is going to be. Because thinking about how I react to stuff, if all I'm hearing about is Final Fantasy VII and how I need to play Final Fantasy VII, I'm like sort of curious about it, but I'm not like super hype about it. James, yeah, I don't really go places anymore. I might be at Gamescom, but I've never gone to DICE.
If you track the number of exposures against the amount of liking, for most people it looks something like this. Initially, we see this steep rise where your interest in the thing is skyrocketing, but as your mind begins to firmly grasp it, it starts to flatten out. Elden Ring lore is more interesting on the third time you see it than it is on the 50th. That's normal. But if you're on your 50th exposure to Persona 3 this week from your friends talking about it or seeing it on your timeline,
Overexposure. Did I call it?
And you were already on the fence about picking it up, it's no longer bolstering its appeal. In fact, what folks in advertising know is that research shows that with even more exposures, not only does this line flatten, it begins to actually go down.
Interesting.
More exposure.
The mere exposure effect, understanding how marketers can optimize emotional responses to ads. This is cool. Our findings reflected the wear in and wear out curve we were expecting and surfaced some exciting insights that will help us deploy clients' O campaigns more effectively in line with MEE. The results showed that up to 9 exposures, the participant favored that particular advertisement. However, between 9 to 12 exposures, the emotional response peaked and began to decrease as the participant became used to it. That's super fascinating. So basically, if you're exposed to something too much, you start to have a disdain for it. That's super cool. Really, really neat stuff. James, you can DM me on Twitter about whatever. But yeah, so interesting stuff. So you see it 9 times, then after that, you're kind of like, all right, well, I don't like it as much because it's being thrown in my face so often.
Begins to lessen your interest about that thing, which is why if you're in marketing, you're trying to show the average person your product just the right amount of times before it becomes annoying.
9 times.
We're looking at you, Burger King. A 1972 study actually illustrates.
That's why you get so mad when you get the same freaking ad on your YouTube videos. It's like, stop showing me this ad about smoking. Not smoking. Brickman, Redfield, Harrison, and Crandall identified a second condition under which mere exposure can lead to less liking. In this study, undergraduate students listened to a 90-second segment of 5 rock and roll songs from the B-sides of popular records in the 1960s. They listened to each song either 0, 1, 2, 5, or 10 times. Finally, participants listened to a 3 to 5 second segment from the chorus of each song and were asked to rate how much they liked the song. Brickman and colleagues expected to observe the mere exposure effect, a greater preference for the songs they had heard more frequently. However, what they actually found was a decrease in liking with increased exposure. This was particularly surprising given that prior to the study, participants had reported that they liked rock and roll music. So why did increased exposure make attitudes less positive in this case? The researchers noticed after the experiment that many of the participants indicated that although they usually liked rock and roll music, they did not like the antiquated style of music used in this experiment. I love psychology. I love this channel because I've always found psychology interesting, and I find this super interesting. This is cool.
Created this using music. Undergraduate students listened to 90-second segments of 5 different rock and roll songs. They listened to each one either 0, 1, 2, 5, or 10 times. Afterwards, they listened to a short segment from the chorus of each one and were asked to rate how much they enjoyed that particular song. Now check the year. This was shortly after mere exposure was conceptualized. So,
interesting.
The researchers expected that the more the students heard a tune, the more they'd like it. But in a surprise to no one here who has ever heard the same music on repeat too long, what they actually found was a decrease in liking with increased exposure.
I used to work in a CD store. I can't remember what it was even called, but I worked in the mall and I worked at a CD store, and they would play the same song all the time, and just like broke my brain because they would just have this same collection of music, and we knew like the songs, the song order. I don't know if you've ever worked in a mall or a location that plays the same songs over and over, but eventually you just stop hearing it. You don't even hear it anymore because your brain like is filtering it out because your brain hates it so much.
Again, this might be obvious. This just in, people also get tired of stuff. The fascinating part, however, is that prior to this study, participants had reported that they liked rock and roll music. It wasn't just some random music becoming annoying, it was something that they liked that started to sour. Not only did overexposure to the music ruin it for them, they even had specific reasons why they didn't like it. The music being too antiquated.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And to me,
that's old. Like, oh, we already heard so much about that. That's old school. You know, I'm not as hype about that. That's what we listened to when we were kids. Nobody likes that anymore. Antiquated. That's a harsh word.
This just screams the same energy of the people online that take a popular game and nitpick it, who try to give us all a
hot take. The blood vial system in Bloodborne was a massive flaw. Seriously, all it ever did was force me to grind for them. Signed, Jerry.
Reality check. It's almost like the overexposure ruins something they might have otherwise enjoyed and causes this knee-jerk sort of, okay, is it really that good? Is it worth all of this attention? Just because FromSoft developed it makes it a masterpiece? Same thing goes for Kojima. Is he really that special?
Yes, he is.
In fact, Kojima might be to some gamers what Taylor Swift is to women who shop at Target. And I think a lot of this comes with the territory of having a gaming opinion on the internet, right? Things being overhyped is irritating to so many of us because why does it actually bother us so much? Is that game actually overhyped, or is it genuinely deserving of all the attention? Does it really matter in the real world? Where was I going with this? I got stuck here writing this script because I could not find anything scientific about this irritation from something being overhyped or the need.
Yeah, I think it's just like a defense mechanism almost. So he's going to go into whatever he ended up discovering. But why do we have that reaction after being overstimulated? It's almost just like you don't want it anymore. Or I don't know. Let's hear what he has to say. I actually don't know.
Correct that perception. At least anything I hadn't already talked about.
What's in a review? Discrepancy between expert and amateur reviews of video game music on Metacritic. Yeah. So we talked about this one. I'll actually link to it. I'll link to this one because this is the previous one we did, and it's a very good video you should check out.
But for some reason, my mind wandered to Among Us. Now, Among Us is not a game I've ever trashed online or felt like it was undeserving of the attention it's garnered over the past few years because, confession, I have never played Among Us.
Neither have I.
One time. And I don't like talking about it because I usually get the reaction you're probably giving me right now. What? How? Do you even know what sus is? I'm kind of that friend from the beginning about that game. I have never really been interested in playing it for whatever reason, even though I don't harbor any ill will toward it. But I do see people.
I don't like multiplayer games a ton. Like, there's a few friends who I like to play with, but I really have been enjoying my solo time. Maybe it's because like I have a wife and 2 kids and I don't get a lot of quiet time to myself. And then my job is like being criticized constantly, you know? And so for me, like I'm playing Last Epoch right now in offline mode because I just don't want to deal with other people. And I really enjoy that time. Helldivers was a surprising game for me because what happened with Helldivers was I would sign on and I would start playing and I would run into old friends. And we would sort of catch up for like 15 minutes and then I would bounce and that would be it. And it was up to me if I wanted to engage in that or not.
We'll talk about it and I kind of just shrivel in the conversation.
Yeah.
And realizing that gave me clarity to keep this script going.
Good.
I don't know why you said that. I still don't know where we're going with this. God damn it. Read the sticky note. Okay, I see. All right, now it all makes sense. Now I see. Normative social influence
Normative social influence. I've never heard of this.
Often causes us to feel, think, and act in ways that are consistent with social norms, standards, and conventions.
Okay. The personal an interpersonal process that causes individuals to feel, think, and act in ways that are consistent with social norms, standards, and conventions. Normative influence is partially personal. Because individuals who have internalized their group's norms will strive to act in ways that are consistent with those norms. It is also because groups place direct and indirect pressure on members to comply with their norms. This is what's happening with the Xbox community. Oh my God. This is so normative influence. This is what's happening with the Xbox community right now. This is insane. Nobody's supposed to like Xbox. Everyone's mad at Xbox. Wow. I love psychology. It's so cool. And I'm the outlier this time because I don't really care how I'm supposed to act. Probably because I'm isolated or something. I don't know.
If everyone is in a line, you're going to line up. If everyone at dinner is drinking a beer, you'll probably grab one too. If something is popular, there is an evolutionary pull to like that thing as well. Because by doing so, you're fitting in and finding social fulfillment. And if the current norm is to be playing Among Us and you hit them with the,
I don't even really want to play Among Us.
What did you just say to me? Not liking a game that the world is obsessed with isn't necessarily always a visceral reaction to keep people from overhyping something. In some ways, it may also be a cry for help because it's more than a game now. It's a social norm that you are falling on the outside of by not buying into. Maybe you're pretending to like it, maybe you just aren't talking about it, but it's because of this that breaking your silence on your thoughts about it is cathartic. It often comes off as a hot take, but it's not necessarily that it's overhyped or that it's popular that bothers you.
I think enough time has gone by that here's my hot take on Among Us. I just don't care to play it. And like it's, I don't think it's bad. I don't really have some hot spicy take about it. It's just like, there was just other stuff I wanted to play at the time. So there, I finally got it. Oh, it feels so good to get that off my chest. I don't know about this.
A lot of your feelings toward it could simply stem from the fact that you feel either left out or tired of pretending just to fit the norm. And maybe I'm reaching, maybe it's not that complicated, maybe you simply don't care to play the game or you've played it, but think another game deserves the kind of attention this one is getting.
That's me.
And we can all relate to that, right? A lot of you, when I asked about this, were really pumped when some of your favorite games or even some of your favorite developers got their flowers. Just as long as it's not too many flowers. Kojima, hogging the last 12 minutes of the PlayStation Direct, or getting more time on stage at the Game Awards than several of the award winners combined. You see how there's a line? You see how popularity is a double-edged sword? I want to tell you about a study that I find hilarious.
Popularity is a double-edged sword. Oh, really? You ever have a hot take about Baldur's Gate 3 that almost gets you canceled? Jeez. It was fine. Like 100,000 views is about the threshold I can handle. 5 million, 10 million views. I'm like, oh shit. It's not going to be a good time for Destin for a few weeks. When mere exposure leads to less liking, the incremental threat effect in intergroup context.
Yes, but it'll make more sense if I first tell you that deep in the far reaches of space, there are billions of molecular clouds resting quietly. And because they are cold, this causes gas to clump, creating high-density pockets. Now, some of these clumps can collide with each other or collect more matter, strengthening their gravitational force as their mass continually grows. Eventually, gravity causes some of these clumps to collapse, and when this happens, friction hits the material until it ignites.
All right.
This
Thanks, Clay.
is how stars are born.
Stars?
I will now tell you how toxic communities are born. A 2009 study took undergraduates and split them in two groups, as you do. Both were presented with several abstract pieces of art created by students at their university and a rival one. Some of the pieces were presented multiple times to see if the mere exposure effect showed up, and it did. When the students saw the art more often, they afterwards reported liking it more. At least, this was true for the control group. In the experimental group, the students were first told, "We have collated feedback from both Birmingham and Aston students. So far, in testing Aston students, they have been giving low ratings for art created by University of Birmingham students." You hear that? They think your shit is mid. They think you're mid, you fucking marsupial. I added those last 3 sentences, but I think that's how the students took it, because the mere exposure effect was completely reversed for this group. The more they saw
no threat, it goes up. Threat, it goes down.
The art from the rival school, the more they disliked it. It's like when you have to watch...
Interesting. This video is covering off on like console fanboyism and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, DarylTalksGames is great.
Patrick Mahomes already hating his guts, and then you hate him even more when as soon as the game cuts to commercial, he immediately shows up in an insurance ad. This is what's known as intergroup threat, and as you can see, it has a deeply reversing effect on mere exposure. And this might contribute to a lot of toxicity between fan bases.
Yeah.
It may not be about fitting in or overexposure, it might be the idea of constantly being reminded of a group of people that make your teeth itch. Throw in a little bit of the Baader-Meinhof phenomena, which is that thing that happens when you suddenly start to see something everywhere after you take any sort of interest in it, like when you think about buying a blue Honda Civic and suddenly the world is full of blue Honda Civics and what the hell is happening to me? Yeah, the internet tends to amplify your feelings towards things, positively or negatively.
And that's what happens. Like, I've talked a lot about how, hey, online, if you're engaging with negativity constantly, that's all you're going to see, and it's going to have an eroding effect on your mental health. You should really sign off, recalibrate, and come back to it. Somebody said something like mean to me once in a DM, and I was like, hey, I read this. I don't really understand your feedback. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, hey, man, maybe you should like unplug. Like, are you just having a bad day or something? I don't really understand. And we sort of had a dialogue about it. And I was just saying like, hey, like this is a very strong reaction for you to be having. Maybe you should recalibrate, like just sign off for a bit and come back at it. And hopefully they did, because it's one of those things where it's just like the anger didn't match with what they were saying.
It makes it harder to just not have an opinion.
Not for me.
I think that's the core behind all of this, and what I hope you get
depends on what it is
out of all my rambling today, that the internet does not leave things untouched.
Yep.
I saw a ton of your comments about games that you still like, but aren't really the same now that they are so gargantuanly popular. Minecraft, Fortnite, League of Legends, there are so many games that, you know, when you found them, were this lush, hidden vista, a place that you could call yours and simply chill out and do your thing. But once you thrust one of these titles into the mainstream and inject a massive new player base into it, suddenly that hidden vista becomes a bustling resort, overrun with tourists. Servers are different. The developers have new people to cater to. The meta changes. What was once your home becomes an engine to pump out content, and your little slice of heaven is never quite the same again.
And you know what? I honestly think that's what's happening in the AAA space. They're getting so much feedback, and it's getting the messaging so muddled about what consumers actually want that we're getting stuff like Suicide Squad that just ends up appealing to nobody. And that's really concerning. I think social media is having a negative effect on a lot of things, and people are losing vision of what is real, what people actually want. They're trying to implement feedback from everyone, and a lot of it is wrong, because everybody from age 9 to 70 has an opinion on everything that you're doing. There's people out there that who hate me and hate this channel and hate everything that I do. Did I stop making content? No. Why? Because I like what I'm doing. I see the YouTube comments. I see the like to dislike ratio. I know there's people out there who don't always agree with me. There are situations with like the Xbox tax video where clearly I was way off base and not in a position where I can even really have a real conversation about the topic at hand. So there's situations like that, but more often than not, the silent majority is saying we love your content. So I keep making it. I don't know, just sort of thinking on all that.
This video has...
Don't make art by committee, I think, is the final thought that I have on that. Art by committee isn't art. And I think that's what's happening in the AAA space. Everyone's trying to make everybody happy. You're not going to make everybody happy. You just need to have a vision for your idea, bring it to fruition, and correct the problems along the way. And sometimes you're going to knock it out of the park, and sometimes you're not. But you're not going to make everybody happy. So stop trying.
Admittedly, been all over the place. I was extremely ill when I wrote this, and this is the final video in this trilogy about how the internet influences our enjoyment of media. Thank God, I did not enjoy writing these for some reason. I want to make more like this. However, those take time to brew. But despite how chaotically this video was written, I think I'm onto something important, and I hope I illustrated that well enough for you to gain something out of this. I hope that all this research was useful.
Only watch 9 of my videos and then take a break and then come back and watch 9 more, because 10 means you'll stop liking me.
If you are the friend at the beginning, maybe this helped you understand a little bit more about yourself. If this is your friend, maybe now you understand where they're coming from. If a game isn't for you, be honest about that. If you're against trying it simply because it's popular, maybe just shut the world out and pretend that you found it on your own. Then decide. The internet is a catalyst for opinions. It will pump every ounce of whiskey, nitrous, and gunpowder into any morsel of a thought that is posted there, and it makes it impossible for things to just be fine. Sometimes fine is fine. Sometimes fine is good. Sometimes fine is just right for you. So
and that's why, why do we keep getting games like, not Sea of Thieves? Why do we keep getting games like Skull and Bones? Because a 7 out of 10 is fine for a lot of people. A lot of people are going to play that game. And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. And what you see on Twitter is not reality. It's just not. Tune it out. Enjoy what you're going to enjoy. Try to block out the noise and just have fun.
So unplug and go plug in.
Unplug and go plug in. I like that. That's a good catchphrase.
Hello, and welcome to the end of the video. If you've made it this far, I'm shocked, but grateful. I cannot tell if this is a good video because I need sleep. As always, if you like what I'm doing here and want to support the show,
DarylTalksGames is great.
If you have a friend that hates when things get popular, will really go a long way in helping the show. And if you feel like dropping $1 a month on me over on Patreon, I make all kinds of bonus content, and you can get your name here in the credits. You might even get mentioned like this month's featured patrons. Phoenix.
That's DarylTalkGames.
The guy.
Really, really good channel.
Mortified Victim. Vanya Pejovich. Nick Williford.
Now,
Brent.
Obviously, we're not talking about valid criticism. We're not talking about just people out there hating to hate. Valid criticism is good. Don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you, Ari. Valid criticism is always good and welcome. Of course it is. But sometimes it's just people out there shouting into the ether. And that percentage is often very small. And as this video just clearly laid out, there's a psychology behind it. So now you have more context to work with as you're interacting with these things. DarylTalksGames is one of my favorite YouTube channels. I didn't realize that was from him. Otherwise, I would have been way more excited. So that's 2 Daryl Talk Games React that I've done. I really like that channel. Go subscribe. I just linked you to it. If you like the video as much as I did, you're gonna want to hit that sub. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much for the subscribers. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell. It's underneath the chat. You can sort of see it. But yeah, hit the thank you to the members. I really appreciate the members for supporting this channel. Thank you so much. Hit that join button right down there. Thank you for watching and following along. I'm going to get out of here, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.